everyone, and welcome to a spoiler review for episode 7 of Agatha All Along on Geek Bites, brought to you by the
Geek Buddies! Hey!
What an episode. What an episode. I probably still have tears caked onto my face from this episode 7, Death's Hand in Mine, directed by Jock Schaefer, showrunner Jock Schaefer, written by Gia King and Cameron Squires. And absolutely, this is Lilia Calderou, aka Patti LuPone's episode. And it was magnificent. It was incredible. It was glorious. So much happened here. This is a spoiler review, so stop now if you haven't seen it. We're going to spoil it all. Shocks and surprises. Some stuff we kind of knew but got confirmed. And I think this, in my opinion, was the best episode of the series. Michael, your overall thoughts on this episode before we get into the specifics?
Well, first of all, I think Agatha All Along deserves a special award for giving us reveals that we all saw coming and still making them so awesome that we don't care. Like 100%. They've done it twice now, and both times I was like, well, shit. I will take it a step further than you. After I got done watching the episode, I just kind of was scrolling through Disney Plus, and I was going through all of the Disney Plus Marvel TV shows. Just kind of flipping through WandaVision, Loki, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Miss Marvel, just all of them. I think this might be the best episode of TV that Marvel made, with the possible exception of the 5th episode of X-Men 97. I think X-Men 97's Remember It and this episode of Agatha might be the two best pieces of content that Marvel has made for Disney Plus.
Wow. Very strong statements, my man. I think a lot of people immediately watching or listening to us are going, wait a minute. So
wait a minute all you want. Those are the two. They are the best episodes of Marvel TV that we got.
Hey, man, 36-minute episode. Pretty incredible to have it be the best episode of Marvel TV, or in the top 2 for Michael Vogel. Shannon McClung, your overall thoughts on this particular episode. What did you think of it?
Across the board, spectacular.
Yeah.
Getting to shine that light on Patti LuPone justifiably for one episode of this series. She and Jen and Sashir Zamata, we've gotten a little bit of their dynamic, how they kind of snipe at each other. But this was just a wholly satisfying episode, not just because of the focus on Patti LuPone, which her performance, the story, from a writer's perspective, I can only imagine how gratifying writing on this series and then writing this episode. There is this feeling of accomplishment when you look and everything Tetrises into place. You're like, oh my gosh, we did it. But also still some really great moments in between Catherine Hahn and Joe Locke. I mean, and we'll get into specifics in the episode, but this is the MCU this far along the road. Not the Witch's Road, the MCU road, when you are this far along the road, when everything is just done correct and just done, again, just very, very satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it just absolutely blew me away. And this is why you cast Patti LuPone. And what have I been saying in our previous reviews? That, like, give her something to do, give her more to do. And my God, they were waiting for this episode. They planned this out to have her be the focus. They dropped little seeds throughout all the previous episodes. As you said, Shannon, have it all Tetris come together in this incredible episode. And by the end, we are absolutely emotionally wrecked by the end. If what we saw at the end happens, what we assume happens, because we didn't see a body, it's a great way to say goodbye for a grand diva like Patti LuPone, who I've never gotten a chance to see on stage, but man, whenever I see her work, it's always just absolutely stunning. All right, so we're going to get into specifics. I'm going to do my best. I've broken it down into 4 sections. I know for a 36-minute episode, you might think 4 sections is a lot, but that's how we're handling, because this show deceptively had a lot within its 36 minutes, and we're jumping all around. So try to keep up. I'll do my best, and we'll break this thing down for you specifically. All right, we start with Lilia, dressed as Glinda the Good Witch. Let's take a look. This is such a great look of hers there as Glinda the Good Witch. I mean, the timing on this with Wicked just about to come out, I thought was genius. She is waking up. We see her waking up and falling down some black hole or black area there. And then we cut to Billy and Agatha walking on the Witch's Road. Agatha catches him reading her mind and says, look, just ask the questions you want to ask me, except about Rio, who is off limits. So they discuss pretty potently that if Wanda is dead or not. And Agatha kind of becomes Kevin Feige in this meta moment by answering yes immediately, and then yes, no, maybe. We will see. And then before they get a solid answer, a Gothic castle comes into view before them, and clearly this is the next trial. They walk in, and it's costume change galore here, just in time for Wicked fans. Agatha is the Wicked Witch of the West. Billy is Maleficent and looks fabulous. They see a tarot table, and timer flips indicating the test has started. Billy's young arrogance makes him think he can do a reading for Agatha, but he is out of his depth. And with every mistake he makes, a sword falls from a ceiling littered with them above them. Agatha screams that tarot is a scam like any other and starts randomly tossing cards down, causing more swords to fall. And as the ceiling lowers closer to them, Billy wishes out loud that Lilia was there with them. So let's take a look at this. There is Agatha. There is Glinda the Good Witch looking great. And here is Billy as Maleficent looking fantastic. So, Michael, these opening few scenes, what are your thoughts? What went on here for you? What caught your eye?
Opening on Lilia falling doesn't bode well for Lilia, but awesome, amazing shot. And then I loved the choice of making Lilia Glinda. I mean, Lilia of all the witches has throughout the season been talking about the way witches are portrayed, the way people think of witches, the things that people say about witches, the rumors that get started about witches. She's the one who's been all about that. So I loved that in her trial, all of the other witches on the road are dressed as witches that represent some of those bad stereotypes. I mean, the Wicked Witch of the West, the OG bad interpretation of a witch that scared children. Maleficent cursed a baby because she didn't get invited to a party, and obviously the old hag version of the evil queen killed Snow White because she was too pretty. So you have these really bad interpretations of witches, but Lilia gets to be one of the only in popular children's fiction images of a perfectly good, honest, true, lovely witch. And I think because this is really the episode where Lilia steps into her power and really embraces the Coven, embraces her role in the Coven, and kind of just is a fucking badass at the end on multiple levels. It was really nice to see that right off the bat. With everything else that happened in this episode, this little bitty scene between Agatha and Billy, I think gets overlooked, and it's just a great, lovely scene. Catherine Hahn is playing Agatha in this way of Agatha cares. I don't know why Agatha cares so much about Billy and what he thinks of her, but Agatha cares a lot about Billy and what he thinks of her. And there is this, she still has her Agatha snark, but she is trying to connect here. I mean, she's really even the, you're going to get a nosebleed trying. He's I'm not trying to read your mind. She's okay, sure. And then asking the questions. Yeah, Rio's off limits because that's way too much to explain. But even the Wanda, I've seen some people with the Wanda answer going, oh, she's still being Agatha. She's keeping things close to the vest. I'm no, I think Agatha's actually being completely honest here. Yeah. She kind of doesn't really know what the deal is with Wanda. She did see a body. She saw Wanda's body. She saw that all the Darkholds across the multiverse were destroyed. So even though she was in her Mayor of Easttown fantasy, some of the things that were in there were factual and tied to the real events of Wanda. And I think watching them try to connect is good. The other part that's interesting here, particularly for everybody that thought Billy was on the road trying to bring Wanda back, is that Billy's not sure how he feels about the Scarlet Witch.
Right. He already has a mom. Yeah.
He already has a mom who's been there for him for the past 3 years, who he knows has been there for William's entire life.
Right.
And he doesn't really know what happened in Westview. He doesn't really remember his time there. He knows that Wanda Maximoff was an Avenger, but he knows that some really bad shit happened in Westview and that she's dead now. And there's the rumors around Wanda Maximoff within the MCU are probably all over the place. So he doesn't really know who this person was, why she created him, what he means to her. And I think that's way more interesting to play than a character who's Scarlet Witch is my mom and I have magic and I want to be with her. This is going to be a tumultuous relationship. So if they ever do get to the place where they adapt the Children's Crusade, where Billy in the comics finds Scarlet Witch, it's going to be really, really interesting. And then getting into the tower, super cool. We see the tarot. We know that this is going to be a Lilia thing. What is it that this says around the table? It's the winding of, what is it, Shannon? You got
it. Your path winds out of time.
Yeah.
Your path winds out of time. And I think like on a first like cursory inspection, it sounds like your path runs out of time. Like it sounds like, okay, we're going to run out of time. The things are going to fall on us. We're going to die. Like but your path winds out of time is very specific to Lilia. So everything is really pointing to her. Yes, teen not really knowing tarot is funny. He is like every gay kid in West Hollywood who gets a tarot deck and comes to a party and starts telling you tarot and doesn't know what they're doing.
That's a thing? That's the thing?
I don't know why it is a thing, but when I tell you the number of gay guys that are like, you want me to read your deck?
What?
And I'm like, okay.
Are you sure they're saying deck? Anyway.
There it is. Thank you. Thank you for that. But then also Agatha's sort of dismissiveness of tarot.
Yes.
Agatha's sort of like, this is a numbers game. It doesn't mean anything. It's all in like what you say. Like even within the witch community, there's some people that are like, look, there's magic. And then there's card tricks. Like then there's this other stuff that she doesn't really believe in it, kind of underscoring the fact that all through the season, as far as much as we love Lilia because it's Patty fucking Lupone, her powers have sort of been all over the place. I don't think Jen or Agatha or anybody is like Lilia is a powerhouse.
Right.
And so the fact that she does tarot and she's got these like weird visions and she's kooky, we've all sort of underestimated her along the way. And Agatha's opinion of tarot, I think, kind of represents that.
Yeah, these two things, the Ouija board and the tarot, those are things that like kind of normal everyday people have kind of played with in getting closer to the witch side of things or metaphysical side of things. And so I like the way they've kind of weaved this into the show to make it have some kind of power, but also deconstruct it at the same time. It's very interesting how they've gone about that. Shannon, what are your thoughts on these opening scenes with Joe and Agatha, Joe Locke and Catherine Hahn, and then when they get into the castle here?
Gorgeous shot of Patty Lapone falling, as Vogel said. I was like, well, this isn't going to end well. But also the exchange between Billy and Agatha. This is the type of scene that I like to go back and watch again. And not just because of the performances, because the performances were great, but it's writers getting to have fun within a shared universe. When you're able to have an entire conversation about someone that is not present, and that conversation is so engaging, that's really fun exposition. And this kind of harkens back to like the first Avengers movie, like the moment that Bruce Banner shakes hands with Steve Rogers and trying to figure out, can we trust each other? Like that is so much fun. And it's the type of thing, if you grew up reading comic books, it's the type of thing that you never thought you would see. And even though the MCU has hit some bumps and some potholes, I mean, it still can deliver truly satisfying experiences. Billy's thoughts on Wanda are really fascinating, because it's like, I have a mom. I know who this person is, sort of. Like I have a connection with them, but the person that I want to have a reunion with is Tommy. Like I remember my brother. That's the person's name who I called out when he first inhabited the body of William Kaplan. So I mean, it's just a lot of stuff for an actor to play, and I think Joe Locke does a really great job. Getting to see a spooky castle again, that's the type of thing I feel like we've all been waiting for, because that's the thing that absolutely belongs on the road, is this scary sort of Castle Frankenstein structure off in the distance. And as they both come in again, this is a great Halloween show, not just because it has to do with witches, but it's because their characters get to dress up in costume every week. And this is the pinnacle of a Halloween costume. You got two people dressed up like witches, and man, I'm sure Cynthia Erivo is going to do a fantastic job in Wicked. But looking at Catherine Hahn, I'm like, man, I mean, you are kind of the classic Wicked Witch of the West. But I'm like, man, you look fantastic in green. But also something you guys already touched on was Agatha's sort of disrespect of the craft, that she wants the power, but she doesn't like what she has to do to get it. She would rather have someone attack her and just be able to sop up their energy rather than actually kind of going through the motions and doing what these other witches have done to acquire their power. Like as she's just kind of throwing the cards down, like this is all a con. I mean, you could certainly say that about Ouija. I think there's a little bit of that with Jen, with the potions. Like even that, like Jen is she in her mind's eye, Jen is conning people. Like this is not real stuff. So the journey that Agatha is going on, that is sort of like going to get her to going to get her to respect the craft, is just really, really engaging.
Yeah, and I'll be fascinated to see how much Alice Wu, her consuming Alice Wu, who has a love for her mother that's very powerful. I wonder how much of that might start to change Agatha as we go into this 2-episode finale, because she does have this gift of hers, but even her mother in that episode where they're in the 80s slumber party called her out for taking the easy way out, for not, really studying or respecting the craft or really working at the craft. So there's an interesting element here of like her disrespect, but her want of it. Where is the middle ground here? Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
Well, I think there's a little pushback. I don't think Agatha doesn't study. I mean, Agatha's entire speech to Wanda at the end of WandaVision was, it took her years and years and years of practice and study to be able to do what Wanda just did effortlessly. Agatha absolutely sucks up witches' powers, but I think that Agatha has gone on a longer. I don't know that her dismissiveness of like tarot is that she's a shortcut witch. Like she's very, very accomplished. Her mom is more focused on the fact that, and I think I believe I was reading this on some wikis and some stuff, like I don't think Agatha's power is in her control. Agatha was born somewhat of a succubus. So when her mom is like, you were born evil, I should have just like killed you right away. It's like Agatha is a witch that sucks up power. Like that's just what she does. And so like even last week when she talks to Billy about not letting anybody make you feel bad about your power, you did what you had to do to survive. Like this is kind of the personality that she has developed. But I just want to be clear that I don't think that Agatha is I don't want to learn how to do things, I'm just going to suck up powers and get them. Like I do think she's a pretty accomplished witch.
Yeah, I think it's more a matter. Yeah, go ahead, Shannon.
Well, no, I was gonna say it took years of sucking up power to get to the point that she can do these things that Wanda was able to do kind of at the snap of fingers. That's kind of what I took from it. And also her begrudging respect of Wanda is really interesting in this scene as well. How she talks about, well, I'm your mom's former best friend. Like the fact that Wanda ex-best friend, the fact that Wanda beat her. I think it really sticks in her craw, but at the same time, she has a begrudging respect for it as well.
But there is a deficiency here, and that's what I've come back to. Yeah, she studied, but sure, people who have, when they're really focused to get something, will study for that one thing. But is it studying overall? Is it an overall appreciation? And I don't know that I necessarily sense that from Agatha. I think there is a bit of arrested development with Agatha. She comes off as an adult, but there are elements of her that are like a teenage girl still stuck in that time, so to speak, especially later when they talk about Rhea. What can I say? I like the bad ones. That's a state of arrested development. And so I think there's, especially for someone who's been around for a very, very long time. So there's this thing of like, she wants to play all the sides that work for her in order to survive. So I think what you're saying though, Mike, is an interesting thing to open up as you're talking, because as a succubus, she's looked down upon. She's seen as someone other. She's othered in her own coven. So she has to fight. She has a hard scrabble life. She has to scratch and claw for her place to exist. So she adopted these things in order to be able to survive, which is why she says the things to Billy, don't be ashamed, because you've got to live. You've got to do whatever you can to live. And certainly that's her mentality, because she had that since the day she was born. And having to figure it all out. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not disrespecting her abilities. I'm just saying there is a little bit of deficiency here in how she's approaching it.
And even in her like relationship with Wanda. Well, and even in her relationship with Wanda, I mean, I think that there is, Wanda beat her and Wanda stole her magic. She's not the biggest fan of the Scarlet Witch, but also Wanda was an outcast in some ways. Wanda was different. To your point, Wanda was othered. I mean, like Wanda was going through grief. Wanda had these children. And I think that for all that Agatha wanted Wanda's power, which she absolutely did, I think that Agatha kind of liked Wanda too, or saw herself in Wanda a little bit.
Sure.
I mean, when she says, I'm your mom's ex, the way they hang on ex before she says best friend, like that followed by the, if you want a straight answer, ask a straight woman, like the sort of like complicated relationship that Agatha feels towards Wanda as she spent all that time in Westview pretending to be her best friend. And then like, there's just layers and layers and layers to her, because I think, to your point, she has been othered by the witch community. She has been kind of on her own. She's built this really hard outer shell. But it's like, when you see things like the way she kind of wants to connect with Billy, there's this other thing in Agatha that's slowly coming out, that I think the next 2 episodes next week are going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you get around people who like have a thing that you don't have, and you, in a way, co-opt it. But then sometimes those are the same people that turn on the people who they were trying to get close to, because they envied what they had that they don't have. So yeah, it's a fascinating thing to explore for sure, which is what's great about the storyline with Agatha. All right, let's move on. Lilia and Jen are in a cave. Jen is looking for shelving and is reeling from the teen being revealed as the son of the Scarlet Witch, which Lilia just told her but doesn't remember. Jen tells Lilia she's acting wispier and kookier than usual because they just had a beautiful heart-to-heart, and this Lilia isn't that Lilia from 5 minutes ago. Suddenly, we flash back to Lilia's outburst from previous episodes, including her warning to Alice to not save Agatha. And then bang, we're with young Lilia here in Sicily, learning from her Maestra, who is played by Laura Boccaletti, who is fantastic. I mean, she is so good as the Maestra before she turns into present-day Lilia, and we hear her talk about her lack of skill with tea leaves. Then bang, we're back in the cave again. Lilia tells Jen that time is an illusion, and as a child, she experienced her life out of sequence with flashes and gaps, and it's happening again, and it's getting worse because she's close to the end of the witch's road, and she's not sure if she wants her power back. This is the moment where I went, oh, son of a bitch. It wasn't the falling at the beginning. It was this moment that I was like, son of a bitch. We cut to Lilia and Jen in the castle, and we've jumped to another time as Lilia is ready to fight Billy. Billy thought they were cool, but apologizes, telling Lilia his power was a surprise to him too. Lilia realizes he's reading her mind because it's too loud, he says. She recalls his bar mitzvah as Jen reminds Lilia that time is an illusion, that she's not mad at the kid anymore. And then Billy wants to know if Lilia put the sigil on her. She says yes, because she saw who we become, and he would need time. And we flash back to Lilia's outburst again, but it's starting to come together for her. We get more with her and Maestra, where Lilia admits she's not rooted in nature, nimble with her craft, or part of a coven, which disappoints the Maestra. She thinks it's better to be a fraud and a hermit than to go through the pain of loss. Lilia confesses she can't control her power, but Maestra tells Lilia her task is not to control, but to see. So Shannon, a lot here, but it's a big chunk of the episode, jumping back and forth here in time, but it all leads to Lilia having to finally confront that she has to do something here, and she has to actually risk something here, and that's what's gonna lead us to that finale. Your thoughts on these interactions and these back and forths, and the episode jumping us back and forth in time and showing us all the non sequiturs from Lilia now coming together.
This is when writing on a show, I have to imagine, is so much fun. Because a lot of times, especially, I mean, not so much anymore like with network TV, but like you start your season and you don't necessarily know exactly how you're going to get to episode 22 and you're shooting episode 1. You might have like 10 episodes written, 13 episodes written. You have a general idea, but you don't know the exact map, and a lot of things can change over the time. This is the type of show that, again, I don't know how much they had done before they started shooting, but I have to think they had a lot figured out, so that this episode they were able to connect to all the previous episodes. And so again, it is so much fun because Lilia's outbursts throughout the first 6 episodes, we knew they were going to pay off in some regard, but even just the splitting with the Alice section, when she says, don't try to save Agatha, like, oh my gosh, like that's absolutely, for an audience, that's absolutely heartbreaking because Alice was one of the characters that, at least for me, I mean, I really, really enjoyed that character. But for Lilia as well, seeing that, like, oh no, the warning, it was out of sequence. I wasn't able to save this person. And so again, watching that moment that she has with Billy, when it's just kind of like she starts off saying we're cool, then it's, you know, why didn't you do something? Like, it's just, again, this is a Tetris Rubik's Cube puzzle putting together. And again, I think the results are fantastic. Again, the performance of Patti LuPone carrying the weight of this, but also Laura Boccaletti. Like, I looked her up, like, doesn't have a ton of credits.
Bunch of shorts. Yeah.
You know, I don't know if she lived in Atlanta or if she was someone that they found someplace else, but what a strong performance, what an effortless performance to come in and just slide right in. And the whole concept again of Lilia sort of living non-chronologically.
Yeah.
Monologically. Was just again was just sorry was just a lot of fun. And again, watching the relationship, even though it is not one of the relationships that has been our primary focus, but the relationship between her and Jen, looking at the difference between divination and potions, and seeing how they slowly have started to come together and the way it is paid off in the end. Mwah, beautiful.
Yeah. Laura Buccaletti, only been acting since 2006, and it's a bunch of shorts. So I'm sure this is a woman who lived a life, did what she wanted to do, and then came back to acting or came to acting. And there's a kind of simplicity in her approach here that feels very universal. We have all had that older woman in our family who just kind of delivers it all matter-of-factly to us. And she kind of fits that role here so strongly in these sequences. Shannon, Michael, your thoughts on these scenes here in the back and forth, what we got with Lilia and Jen, and then what it leads to with the Maestra and Lilia, and then her, the Maestra telling her straight up, it's not your job to control, it's your job to see. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think that kind of to Shannon's point, I mean, yes, this is the satisfaction of a payoff like this is great. There's lots of shows that try and do something like this, and when the pieces fall into, I mean, sometimes the pieces just don't fall into place, and you're like, oh, they fucked it up. But even when they do, sometimes the execution is, all right, cool. And now we see what that meant. This was just done so perfectly, and to have Patti LuPone at the center of it, living Lilia's life from Lilia's perspective in this episode versus what we've been doing thus far. Thus far, we've been on the outside looking in. So we're all going on, we're watching time happen chronologically, linearly, and then all of a sudden Lilia has like an outburst and you're like, oh, there's crazy Lilia again. So to all of a sudden flip the tables for us and watch it happen the way that she's experiencing it, and to even have us be a little bit confused. Like in that first scene with her and Jen, where Jen says, well, the Scarlet Witch's son is the one who did it to us. And I'm sitting here going like, wait a minute, how does she have that information? We haven't, that hasn't happened yet. She doesn't know that. And then she's like, you told me a few minutes ago. And I'm like, oh, we're going to see that happen later. So that happening. And then, Shannon's right. Like I imagine what happened is as they probably went back and rewrote these little bits so many times. There's like probably a placeholder with Alice in her episode where it was like, Lilia says something here. And then they got to later, oh, okay, now it's kooky and wispy. That's the line. So there's a lot of like going back and forth that I think was a lot of fun. But really, I think, the heartbreaking part about this is Lilia is this witch who's lived so many hundreds of years. Yeah. And she said that she was going down the witch's road to get power, but her Maestra says that's not why you went down the road. Like, that's not what you're looking for. And what are you looking for? And it's like, she's so insistent that she's lived this life as a hermit. She's lived this life sort of set apart from people, and that she's not really, and her Maestra says, like, you need to see. You need to actually see what's in front of you. And the way that this sisterhood of this coven in the final moments of her life ends up meaning so much to her. That relationship with Jen, like that moment with Jen when they're walking through the caves, where Jen's like, well, what do you want me to see? And she says it really dismissively. And then she says, no, actually, like, what do you want me to see? Like, show me, like that Jen is like, no, I hear you. Explain this to me. And seeing that dynamic between the two of them, it was all just really lovely. I mean, for a show, like, look, we've got, to Shannon's point, we've got the connections to the bigger Marvel Cinematic Universe. We all want to see Wanda Maximoff come back. We love the MCU. The witches are fun. Agatha's hilarious. We got Billy Maximoff. But really, at the end of this is a show about these women that are coming together. And the fact that in a very short amount of time, they made us care about Mrs. Hart. They made us care about Alice. And here we are with Lilia. And each one of these deaths impacts, I'm not saying everybody is broken up and weeping every week when somebody dies, but we actually care enough that we're like, oh man, like we're still sort of reeling from, we feel bad that Alice got her power sucked up by Agatha. And then we get these moments and it's bittersweet because of the way that Lilia really embraces who she is at the end here.
Yeah.
Oh, and also really quick, sorry, my bad.
No.
Loved the choice to not have. Previously, when we saw the Billy episode, we did the whole effect where we could hear what he was hearing in people's minds.
Yes. Yeah.
But I loved the way they played this scene between him and Lilia, where he was just looking at her. And again, as much as we are in Lilia's perspective from this episode, we just hear Billy saying the things, and contextually we understand what's happening. But the way this entire conversation happens, and, you know, kudos to Joe Locke for actually playing his response to what he's hearing that we don't hear. Like his sort of like him feeling really bad and being like, look, if I could use my powers, I would have saved Alice. I absolutely would. Like, it's like the whole scene was super, super sweet, even though we got one side of it. So again, just like every single performance in this show is rocking and rolling. And the fact that we care about every single one of these relationships is one of the many things that made this episode really stand out.
This episode is deceptively a really powerful episode. And I know that term gets overused all the time, but I mean it. Like, there's commentary going on here because of what Lilia says. Like, I just thought it was better to be a hermit and not use my power because all I see is death. And she's like, no, your job is not to control. Your job is to see. You have to accept, which so many people want to resist the roles that there are in life. And you've been given a power and ability to do something. And people want to resist it, or people are afraid of it, or people look at, well, if I do it, it'll lead to this. It could lead to this. We live so many people live petrified, and I include myself sometimes, petrified in thinking, well, what happens if I do this in the future? It could lead to this. It could lead to that. And we never act, or we're afraid to act, or we let opportunities pass us by. And I love that we're going back and forth in time with Lilia, because we as the audience are now getting a much more rounder picture of Lilia, who up until this point had been a person of outbursts. But of course, the majesty of Patti LuPone helps us care about her. But having these random moments, and you're right, Mike, these moments where we're connecting, the show itself overall, when we're connecting with these twosomes or threesomes, when they end up being on their own, Joe and Alice in that second episode, and all these things, like we have these moments with them. But just like in life, it is fleeting. It is a time, and then it's gone, right? And I think that's important to understand here. The show could easily be like, we're going to keep everybody alive and close to death, escaping death. But no, we are going to explore what it's actually like. And sometimes, yes, you have these bittersweet connections. Jen and Lily are just coming together so powerfully as friends. And then, of course, what happens at the end, Lily is taken from Jen. And so this is life. And so I like that the show has this undercurrent of the reality of the world working underneath all the fun stuff that's happening. And this episode, and this is why I imagine they worked to this for Patti LuPone to deliver this kind of powerhouse performance in highlighting the stuff that's going on here and some of the messages that are working underneath the actions that are happening in this episode.
Well,
at least that's
Lilia has been running from death her whole life. I mean, Lilia's whole issue was she told her Coven, she told her Maestra that death was coming, and nobody really listened. They all died. Right. And we literally see in her flashback in the third episode, she sees her Maestra who's dead, and she sees death behind her. She's been running from death her whole life. She's afraid of death. Her death is imminent now, and she's still afraid of it. And it's not until she fully embraces that. And in addition to your point about like what life is fleeting, life at those moments, like look, in Loki season 2, Loki controlled his time slipping when he started caring about the individuals in his life. That's how he could control his time slipping. And here Lilia, who is also in her way time slipping, the thing that actually grounds her at the end is caring about her Coven and doing what she can in the final minutes to warn Agatha what's ahead, set Jen on the right path, like do everything for them. Yeah. Like that's why we're like, fuck, man. Also, if everybody comes back to life at the end of the last episode next week, I'll be fine with it. I don't care about thematically. If they all come back and they're like, well, that was a hell of a journey, and they all go on their own way, I just want to be clear, I'm still going to be okay with it.
I might have some issues, but fair enough. Yeah, and even Billy, because she's the one we're going to find out here who put this, or we find out who put the sigil on him because she knew what he was going to have to experience.
And
so
she gives him back his spell.
Caring. Oh yeah, we'll get to that. I'm just saying, like overall, she has been caring for this Coven since before the Coven came together. All right, all right. We're back in the cave from earlier in time. Lilia finds Billy's spell book and admits to Jen that she put her gift away because all she saw was death, which is what Michael just alluded to. They hear Billy and Agatha from earlier in the episode when they're arguing around the tarot table there, and they fall through the shelving in the tarot room, just as Lilia had said they had to find these shelves. Lilia takes control of the tarot reading and tells Billy to ask a question that's essential to his journey. Agatha wants him to ask about getting out because, of course, Agatha does. But Billy wants to know whether he's William or Billy, and the swords stop. And Lilia says that's a good question. Lilia does a safe passage spread for Billy, which includes the path behind him, the path forward, the obstacles, and the potential windfall. He must overcome them all to reach his destination. Lilia tells Billy he's the magician with enormous potential. Hint, hint. What's missing is joy and reunion. But with who? Still, the swords keep falling. So what is she missing? Then we flash to Lilia, young Lilia, telling her Maestra that she came on the road because, older Lilia telling her Maestra that she came on the road because she's a forgotten woman. And what's to remember? That she knew when Maestra and her whole coven's deaths were coming, but could do nothing to stop it. As Michael said earlier, Maestra tells Lilia that death is what they all have in common, which is something that Lilia said earlier in the episodes. Lilia puts it together and sees that she's going to fall. Maestra asks what she will do with the time she has left. It's so important. Then back in the cave. We go back in time to Lilia waking up, all covered in the mud there, and telling Jen everything about Billy, the trial, and the shelving. Jen sees a way out, but the Salem 7 come through, and after they hide, because apparently the Salem 7 can't detect them, Lilia says she's choosing the trial path and hopes Jen will join her, and they have a sweet bonding moment as Jen does join her and walks down the path ahead of her. So, Michael, a lot here, really beautiful moments, but also the idea of Lilia needing to step up and be a part of this thing and take part and see what's happening here. What are your thoughts on these scenes here as we find out more about the journey?
Yeah, I mean, a lot. I covered a lot of this already because we're all over in this episode because it's like it's all happening out of order. But yes, I mean, Lilia's journey
usually
here
stop you, but like there's so much. You're right.
Yeah, Lilia's journey is sort of the central piece here.
Yeah.
But I already spoke about that. A couple smaller things that I found interesting. One, in the comic books, Billy's magic as a young Avenger is pretty much him just saying what he wants to have happen. Like, I want to protect mom. I want to protect mom. I want to go to Latveria. I want to go to Latveria. So I do think it's interesting, particularly in this episode, when he says, I wish Lilia were here, is the exact moment Lilia and Jen come through the shelving.
Yeah,
and
true.
I think if you were to go back and rewatch it, there's other key moments. I mean, we've already said that Agatha clearly suspected right off the bat that Billy's magic was sort of informing a lot of what the Witch's Road even looks like. So I think that like another thing that will be interesting to go back and look on, particularly after we get the information we're going to get in these next 2 episodes, is to see all the points where how much of this did Billy control? As we saw in last week's episode, Billy had relationships with every single member of the Coven in some way, shape, or form. So when then him and Agatha went on this journey, it's like so many little ways that Billy sort of was driving this as the magician. And even though his tarot reading wasn't the correct tarot reading for the challenge, a lot of really fascinating information here. I mean, obviously Billy is the magician. We know that there is a reunion coming, but we don't actually know who that reunion is. I mean, so all of the pieces there were really interesting. And then cutting back to the scene with Jen and Lilia, really great to see Lilia in that moment of clarity be like, hey, Billy's a Scarlet Witch's son. This is what happened. This is what happened. This is what happened. I'm literally going to forget this any minute. And so you're like, okay, I am now caught up to where I was before. And another cool detail was, hey, I thought the same thing about the Salem 7, but to be clear, they don't give a shit about Jen or Lilia.
True.
They're after Agatha and only Agatha. So like, I'm kind of like, yeah, you know what? They don't give a fuck. But I loved that I don't know why the Witch's Road was offering them the chance to get out, but I do love that the chance to get out was the Westview Metro station that Mrs. Hart mentioned in the 2nd or 3rd episode, where she says, as a member of the Westview Historical Society, I was just expecting our sort of defunct metro system down here, and you're like, oh, there it is. So like that there is a exit out. You can leave and abandon your coven and go out of here. You got to get out of jail free card. And that Jen in that moment, who, remember, even in like the second challenge, Alice's challenge, she was the one that wouldn't get out of that circle. Like Agatha was giving her shit. Like Jen was pretty much out for Jen. So to have Jen in this moment go, I got an out, but I'm going to stick with my sister. Again, just great fucking moment.
Yeah. I think that's why I'm coming around on the fact that Billy might have constructed this witch's road himself, because it's not as evil of a witch's road as you might think. And so there seems to be much more
all swords falling from the ceiling to the contrary.
I mean, but all missing them though, and so it's just these little things. These little things that I'm seeing here, because I've seen some people speculate on. Hey, look, you got to have a little danger. There's nothing wrong with a little danger, but but I see people speculating that Billy created the Witch's Road all over the internet, and so I haven't dove into people's theories on all of that, but it feels like the way it's constructed, it could make sense. You could make a case for it, especially if he's supposed to become this massive wizard, maybe the Demirage later. I don't know, but there's possibilities here with his power starting out, right? And Agatha even said last episode, you're not going to be able to control your power.
Billy Kaplan in the comics is like Doctor Strange, Sorcerer Supreme level. I mean, like Billy is up there. And so, I mean, he's the Scarlet Witch's son. Like this is just wild, untapped power. So I do think that, I mean, the fact that when they get to the Witch's Road and he's like, this is how I always pictured it. And Agatha gives him that look, and just he's the one that finds the clues, like, almost every time. Like there's just an element to even I'm the gay one, so I can say it, even the queerness of costume changes. Like it's super gay. Hey, get a new costume every single challenge. You're like, well, only a gay kid would come up with that one.
Fair point. Shannon, you don't have to speak on that, but would you speak on the other teams that we were talking about here? What are your thoughts on everything that happened with Lilia and Jen in this section of the show, and then the confrontation with Billy, and then eventually her doing the reading for Billy and realizing that that death is what they all have in common because of what Maestra said, and stepping into the fray here?
Well, one, I can't remember if it took place in this section or the last section, but that moment where young Lilia sees her Maestra, and Maestra is having a normal conversation, but then realizes something's different. She's like, "Oh, you're visiting." Like, what a great little moment. It really reminded me of the great book and not so great series and film, The Time Traveler's Wife. Like, there's a lot of moments like that, and that was just like, "Ooh, you're not who I'm used to. Where are you from?" So I thought that was just a nice little bit of seasoning. Again, Patti LuPone, you mentioned it already, John. The trio of this series has been Agatha, Billy, Aubrey Plaza. That's been the triumvirate. But when you do have a really, really good supporting cast, and Patti LuPone is part of it, like, you want to use her. So even though at the beginning it didn't seem like she was maybe being used to her full potential, you get to an episode like this and you're like, oh, okay, this was all road to get to here. And the little moments that she has with Jen are definitely paid off here. The moment where Patti LuPone does say, like, I'm going to my trial, I would like it if you would join me. And that whole, like, you are my sister in the craft. Like, that's just a great, great moment. And I feel like, again, things only make sense in hindsight. And when you look at what led up to it, it's like, you know what? They knew exactly what they were doing. And looking at the episodes that Jack Schaefer directed, 1, 2, and the fact that she directed this one, it's like, that was a very, very deliberate choice, because this is the person, as the creator, as the showrunner, this is the person who knows this story intimately enough that it's like, okay, she has to be the one there on set that day making the calls, because she knows that here we're going to go left, here we're going to go right. Like, it was just so well done. And yeah, I love those moments where Lilia is fully lucid and is able to just be like, this is what you need to know. Like, just a lot of fun. And when she does see, are we getting to the moment where she calls out Rio as death? Have we?
Yeah, well, not yet. There's the next section.
Okay. Yeah, so then
I save it. I mean, slow down there, buddy.
I save it.
I can't remember
where we are.
I know. I know. But no, I mean, this is all great stuff, and I already spoke about it when Michael and I were having our exchange. But it's just great to see this again, the commentary of death. Yes, it feels like, oh yeah, all you see is death or whatever, and you don't want to act or you're afraid to, but like you've got to play a hand here. It's important. And when she thinks it's Billy, because that's Lilia's natural instinct is to care and save and protect and help when she's not doing her, going off on these non sequiturs, because that's all connected to the overall story. When she's really herself and lucid, as Shannon just said, she's about protecting and caring and wanting to help people. And so that's a really hard part of it. And the people who want to help the most are the people who sometimes are afraid to help because they commit so much of themselves emotionally. They hurt so much when that doesn't work out. And so you see that element of her, I think, in the performance that Patty is delivering. All right, let's get to the last section here of the episode. Back at the trial in present time, Lilia realizes she needs to read herself, not the teen. She's the traveler, the Queen of Cups, who's empathetic and has an inner voice that can be trusted, as I just referred to. We flash back to Maestra encouraging her, and the swords stop falling, but the ceiling keeps descending. Lilia keeps reading to find what's missing. She goes to the Three of Pentacles, which is community. The path behind is the Knight of Wands, who's a brave fighter. The path ahead is the High Priestess, who is clearly Jen, who has a spiritual power but is unwilling or unable to use it. That's going to be interesting for the next episode. Obstacles, Three of Swords, which is heartbreak, sorrow, and grief. Windfall, Tower reversed. That's a foreshadowing. Miraculous transformation, destination, death. So clearly, it really kind of laying it down that she is going to die at some point. We see Rio approach Lilia in the cave, as Shannon was referencing. She realizes that Rio is death. Is this the shot? Yeah, that Rio is death. And what a scary looking death that is. I don't think that's the death that Thanos is attracted to. I think there's a whole different death that they're going to go with here. The ceiling of swords stops and rises again. They've passed the trial. Lilia tells everyone that Rio is death and the original Green Witch. Agatha admits it's true, but what can she say? She likes the bad ones. Then the Iron Maiden exit opens, and Lilia gives everyone something as they leave. She tells Agatha to hit the deck when Rio calls her a coward. She gives Billy his spellbook back, tells Jen she needs to go ahead of her and that she's the path ahead, and then tells her she loved being a witch before closing the Iron Maiden door. Yeah, I got emotional here. She confronts the Salem 7, and at this point, I fully know what's going to happen, and I did burst out crying by myself 10:30 at night in my living room. Lilia turns the tower card upright, and her and the Salem 7 begin to float in space, and each of the Salem 7 drop onto the swords, killing them. We see blood on those swords. Lilia is the last to fall, which reminded me of like Gene Hackman hanging on to that wheel in the Poseidon Adventure. And before we see her die, though, as she's falling backwards, going all the way back to the beginning of the episode, we don't actually see her die. We flash back to a young Lilia smiling and joining Maestra for her first lesson. So, Shannon, a lot here, a lot to explore in this section. Your thoughts, my brother?
I mean, just a really well put together section. I mean, I do feel like it was in episode 4, episode 5 when the broom chase. That was a thrilling sequence, and that at that point was something that the series hadn't had a lot of, and I felt like it was missing. Ever since the broom chase, I feel like they have been on that path, and it's been full speed ahead. And this sequence at the end, as she is reading herself, again, that's the type of frenetic filmmaking that puts you on the edge of your seat, that makes you lean forward. If you're in a movie theater and this happens, this is when you grab your popcorn and you start mindlessly shoveling copious amounts of popcorn into your mouth. The moment where the revelation, as Mike already talked about, the revelation that Rio is death. Yeah. And you get that shot of her where you see her come out of the shadows, and there's a moment that there's a better lit photo for those of you that are listening right now. John has a shot of Rio in her death form online. Someone has lightened it so you can see even more of it. And at first I was like, is that almost like a nod to Deus Los Muertos? But looking at the light is like, nope, it's not. That's just a skull with Aubrey Plaza's eyes. Yeah. Or Aubrey Plaza's upper half of her face. And it is scary. But I'm curious, can you all see what is in her left hand? We can see the knife is in her right hand. But what is she holding in her left hand?
Vines.
Yeah, it looks like vines of some kind. Yeah.
She's a green witch.
So it's
life and death. It's life and death.
Yeah.
Again, super, super well done. Very. Oh, John, you're gonna hit me now.
Yeah, I know. I know.
You two very emotional. Are just such emotional roller coasters.
This is when you have a heart, Michael. This is what it looks like.
Someday
when you
you're
have
gonna
a heart,
age.
when you have feelings.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah, Lilia. Yeah, Lilia, you can't escape death, Lilia. You have to actually play a hand, Lilia Bogle. Go ahead. Yeah.
The farewells, all really, really great, especially the one with Jen. But then looking at the action of this scene as the Salem 7 come in their animal forms, they slowly morph into their human forms, and it's creepy, and it's like the little girl from The Ring with all the sharp movements. And then when she puts down the tower reversed card, and you see that little bit of an effect as the card hits the table, the effect that they did here to make it look like the room was spinning or the room was reversing, just awesome. I mean, all just from a costuming standpoint, you see these long billowing, black gowns. You see them kind of, just moving in the air. And as they all go down, like, again, for a show that they have said has had the smallest budget, this is one of the moments that they were able to maximize that amount of money to make something not just look really cool, but again, it's so emotionally, it just tugs at your heartstrings, because you see our bad guys are about to get their comeuppance, but we know they're not going to get their comeuppance without Lilia having to sacrifice herself. So again, it's just a really, really well done sequence. And it ends on a high note as you go back to the Maestra. It's just kind of like, hey, like, tell me what's been going on. Bang. Great episode of TV.
Yeah, agreed. Here's the shot you were talking about, I think, Shannon, a little more of a brighter shot. You can see at his veins. Those are not, and the mask is pretty much her face with kind of a skull thing at the bottom, which is pretty gruesome and scary, but a great look overall. But it does evoke a little bit of Dia de los Muertos, so I don't think you're off base in making that comparison at all. Michael, what a couple of scenes. You clearly were not emotionally moved by any of this, so tell us what you thought about what was going on.
I was absolutely emotionally moved. First of all,
what's it like rattling around in your soulless husk?
Wow. First of all, to correct Johnny, that's absolutely the Lady Death that Thanos is in love with, and Wade Wilson in the comic books. I mean
the storyline that I don't think they're going to pursue.
Yeah, no. Well, the storyline is all different because Thanos didn't do what he did because of Lady Death. He did what he did because, like all of us, he gets tired of sitting in traffic on the 405 and wanted to clean that up a little bit, and he wasn't wrong. But yes, in the comic books, Thanos wants to kill everybody because he's got a massive old crush on Lady Death, who also had a little fling with Wade Wilson in the comics. And now Agatha Harkness is in on the mix with this version of Lady Death. So I do think the Lady Death part, really quickly, is just awesome. Again, thanks Funko for ruining it for all of us, for revealing that death toy early. But like I said at the beginning, despite the fact that it was sort of high, you could tell with what Aubrey Plaza was saying, with what Rio and Agatha's conversations were, the fact that she's death was not a surprise, to your point, and to showing the image. What an image. Still such a great reveal. And even though it's now been confirmed, this whole dynamic between Agatha and Death and why they've had the falling out and what Death did probably with Nicholas Scratch, there's still so much more that we want to know, even though the thing has been confirmed. And I think that's what Jacques Schaefer does really, really well. So I think that was really great. We talked a lot about Lilia, all of her little kooky things that she said falling into place, but also really love this final reading because we've seen throughout the series her calling out these cards at key moments, and we didn't really know what it meant. And so to be able to go back and rewatch this and know that when she walks into Agatha's house and sees Jen for the first time and says High Priestess, and knowing how that's going to affect this scene here, I just think it's going to make the rewatchability of Agatha really, really great. And as we've been saying, as far as Lilia's journey goes, not that I'm going to get super emotional about it, but it is very touching that I think when any of us think about death And death, as they say, is something that's going to happen for all of us. The real question is, what do you do with your life? What do you do, whether you are 10 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old, 80 years old, what do you do with the time you have left? Yeah. And the fact that in this episode, Lilia, who has sort of pulled away from everybody and had been living this life of a hermit, just kind of like getting by, in these final moments said, I'm going to make the most of it. The Maestra said, it's not about when you die, it's what do you do with the time you have left. Yeah. And she does the reading, solves the challenge, as John said, gives Agatha the warning on what she needs to do in a key moment with Rio that we're going to see, tells Jen that she's got some stuff ahead of her and that she's the leading the way, gives Billy the book. Like, she just does everything. And then when she closes out Jen's very genuine like sadness of what Lilia is about to do. Yeah. And then Lilia's just centered calmness. Like, I mean, again, Patti LuPone, like, just was like, Lilia had embraced who she was, had embraced her power, had embraced where she was in her life, and just destroyed that moment. I mean, Patti LuPone owned this episode. The only thing I'm worried about, I don't know that all of the Salem 7 are dead. There's a big debate right now. Like a friend of mine texted and said he only heard 4 thunks. Somebody else said they think they saw 5 Salem 7 go down. There are 7 of them, and I don't know that all of them have been taken out yet. So that is going to be that's going to be a big old TBD.
Yeah.
Also, one of them can turn into a bird. So
yeah, were their powers suspended because of what happened in turning the tower upside down? Did that suspend their abilities to transform into some other creature to get out of the situation? It's a good point. Maybe we will see. Yeah, I mean, to me, this was, again, the tour de force of Patti. Like, there was such an earnestness and honestness in what she was delivering. This is, Patti doesn't always get to play these kinds of roles, by the way, right? These are she usually plays these really grand dame, powerful musical theater roles. And occasionally she had that TV series back in the 90s where she got to play the mom of the family and things of that nature. But this is an element of Patti that we don't always get to see. And to see it come so I don't know, so beautifully through this episode, and especially in these final moments when, yes, she knows her death is coming, and now she's accepted it, so she's going to be a part of it. And I think, as someone who's lost someone to cancer, the idea of accepting your death, accepting the inevitability of your death is very hard. But when you come to terms with it, there can be a peace, that comes. And so when she turns and when Jen is screaming, that's when I started crying. When Jen is like screaming, like that was the moment for me. And when she turned around, as Michael, you said so well, there's just a calmness that she knows what she has to do and she's accepted it. There's a path and there's a strength in acceptance, which a lot of people sometimes have to kind of work towards to get to that place when the inevitability is happening. And there is a peace that comes. And so I think there was a little bit of a mini commentary there that I thought was really powerful. That being said, when it happened...
You maniac! You blew it up! Oh, damn you! God damn you all to hell!
My feeling when I saw Lilia die, because I've been waiting for Patti to be the star that she is and have more to do, and they give her more to do right as they kill her, possibly, because it's what it felt like. But yes, that's how I felt, you bastards. Anyway, great ending, though, for this episode. It makes us even more invested, I think, going such a smart way to construct the season to end on this episode, arguably the best episode of the series. And as Michael said, maybe one of the best episodes ever in Marvel TV to lead us into this 2-episode finale. Any final words, gentlemen? Michael, I'll go to you and then Shannon as we wrap up here.
I saw something online. Have you noticed? I don't know that this is a thing that is actually real, but I saw the doorway when they were leaving. The colors on the Witch's Road link up to the order in which the Infinity Stones were revealed within the MCU.
Ooh.
So the first challenge, the house in the first challenge that was blue leaves, blue road, followed by red, Alice's challenge. Then we went to purple in the Ouija board episode.
Yes.
Yellow, the Mind Stone in this episode.
Yeah. Yes.
Did I miss one? Green? And then we're about to go into green. Like we could see when they went into the Iron Maiden, the lights behind them were green. Yeah. And I don't know that this means anything at all, but given the Infinity Stones and Marvel and everything else, the fact that like the colors At first, I was like, oh, this is not a thing. And then I was like, nope, everyone's going down that WandaVision road where they're seeing everything. But when I saw the Iron Maiden and it was the green, and I'm like, well, that is the time stone. So, so I thought that was interesting. And also, I am a little bit sad that they're giving us both episodes next week because I'm sad that next week is the end of Agatha.
I know, right? That is sad. Shannon, final words on this episode to wrap up our review here.
Again, what a great show for Halloween. Like just a great show. And I do agree that I don't want the Witch's Road to end yet, but the fact that it will conclude on Halloween Eve, I'm like, that does seem appropriate. Jack Schaefer is very much 2 for 2 at this stage. So I don't know if feature films is something that she wants to do, if she likes doing like kind of long form storytelling. But man, if there's someone that has earned a shot at taking a crack at a movie, it sure seems like it's Jack Schaefer.
Well, and not just a movie. I mean, Jack Schaefer has, like, when it comes to this corner of the MCU, the witchy corner of the MCU, but also very specifically Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, Billy, the relationships here, like everything that she has done. It's like, I think everyone is on the more of this, please. Like Terry Metalis running with Vision Quest, like all about it. Terry Metalis has earned his stripes on Picard. I am excited to see what he does, but if they're going to do a Scarlet Witch movie, and I don't know why on earth they wouldn't, she's absolutely the one to helm that.
Yeah, and there are a lot of rumors over the last few weeks saying that Marvel is really looking at Scarlet Witch to be a linchpin for a lot of the stuff going forward. So it would make sense to have her involved, especially when I read today that Kelly Marcel is being looked at for the James Bond movie, and that Venom 3 movie was horrific. So if she can get a shot, Jack Schaefer should be getting shots at bigger stuff as well. And there are a lot of these female directors through these TV shows, both Marvel and Star Wars, who we have enjoyed. Steph Green being another one. Like I want to see these people getting shots at theatrical stuff. So let's see what they can do.
Burton Birdie. Burton Birdie from Hawkeye. Has one of the best chases in the MCU.
Absolutely. Yep. Burton Birdie, good point. All right, well, there you go. That's our spoiler review for this episode 7, which was a hell of a lot to navigate. Death's Hand in mind. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks so much for watching and listening. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's at geek_buddies. On Instagram, at _geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung. On Instagram, it's Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you would like to follow Mr. Vogel and see if there is a heart in there someplace, it's at MKToon. If you'd like to follow Mr. Rocha and see if you can get that heart down a little bit, because he's an emotional guy, it's at the Rocha Says.
I am a wreck, even worse as I've gotten older. Michael.
I ain't going to cry if you smash that like button below, but I like it. I'm not going to cry if you follow Johnny's Outlaw Nation page, but you really should. Leave some comments below. You might make me cry depending on what you say. You could give it a go, but leave your comments below. See, maybe I'll let you know if I get a little tear going or not. I won't cry unless you follow us on the podcast feed. Leave us some stars and comments there. And also, you can always retweet this video, post it on your socials, send it to your friends. Tell them to hang out with your buddies, the very emotional Geek Buddies.
Well, 2/3 of us. Thank you so much for joining us. We will talk to you next week for this colossal 2-part finale for Agatha All Along. But of course, later on this weekend, we will have our Geek Buddies full episode for the week as well for you all to enjoy. Thanks so much. Take care of yourselves. Be well. And we'll talk to you next time with another band review here on Geek Bites from the
Geek
Buddies.